Maybe we've really been breaking down the ways that you find identity outside of work. Or maybe I'm not really your therapist and you're just here to get my take on these Reddit stories. My boss body shame me? I've been working a job at a daycare center, and my boss at the daycare center is also a Zumba instructor. My office is on the basement floor, and I have to go up a flight of stairs to the main office frequently. My boss calls me to go up and down the stairs all the time. Mind you, I'm not skinny, I'm fat, but I never complain about going up and down the stairs. She will call me to go up and down the stairs at least 10 times when she's there, and she makes comments like, "You need the exercise anyway." Normally, I just ignore her comments, but today she made them again in front of other skinny coworkers and a parent that was there to make a payment, and they looked at me embarrassed because of her comment. I don't know how to address it. Wow, I know I've said it before, but I absolutely hate people feeling the need to comment on other people's bodies. Unless someone has specifically asked you for your opinion, there is no need to throw in your 2 cents. People actually don't need you making judgments about the way they take care of their bodies based on extremely limited superficial information. This OP is clearly able to climb the stairs as many times as she needs to, so right off the bat, this boss has no reason to assume that her employee is not getting enough exercise. It sounds like that judgment is based on nothing but fat phobia and prejudice. In my professional life and work, I really subscribe to the healthy at every size framework, which promotes joyful self-care and intuitive eating for all body types, because people can be totally healthy at different sizes and with different body types. And even a framework like that is kind of reserved for like a healthcare professional where somebody has solicited their opinion, not a random coworker or acquaintance, or God forbid, a boss. Even if she's not getting enough exercise, why is that any of your business and why does it bother you? Like, the only reason that exercise and dieting are somehow wrapped up in morality only exists as a marketing strategy. But it's been such an effective strategy used by diet companies since the 50s that it's like it's in the air we breathe, and so many of us have internalized it and then start regurgitating it onto others. Ask a question, sort of Socratic and sort of begging maturity. Here are some options. Feel free to use what works or alter it to your own needs. Just make sure it has a question mark at the end. Always ask, never tell. Do we really need to comment on other people's bodies? If you'd like, you can preface it with a "come on now" and end with "at work." And use your friendly voice with a smile, as if you are softly instructing a young person, perhaps one of the daycare clients. Isn't picking on each other something the kids do? Don't we discourage that? Aren't we supposed to model respect for others? Say it with a friendly smile and almost a wink, but not quite. It turns it around on her, and if it's done in a very pleasant voice, it can be said in front of the parents. After all, that's who she said it to. Then walk away. I definitely like that advice. It's sad that OP will need to take the moral high ground when her boss is being outrageous, but that's a very effective kind of like cover your way to do it. I also personally always like the kind of blunt but still with that friendly tone and smile, like, "Wow, that seems really inappropriate" response to something like that. Just something that puts the awkwardness of the situation back onto the boss because she's the one who is bringing an inappropriate topic to the workplace. That's not just rude, it's unprofessional and crosses into harassment, especially when done in front of others. Don't let it slide. Put it on record. Document every comment with date, time, witnesses. Next time she makes one, calmly say, "Please keep comments about my body out of work conversations." Once you've set that boundary, she can't claim she didn't know. If it continues, escalate to HR or higher management with your log. It'll be way harder for them to ignore when you've tracked it. Her fitness gig doesn't give her a pass to disrespect you. Your weight isn't her business, your work is. This is another totally appropriate response. You can maybe hear how this is a much stronger boundary for OP to set, so it's totally up to OP how comfortable they are kind of escalating it to that point. I personally tend to be a fan of starting off with softer boundaries and then escalating as necessary, but sometimes you just don't want to go through that back and forth, and that's okay too. This kind of a response is totally appropriate and professional and well within OP's right if that's the route they want to go. Aw, aren't you just adorable? Bless your heart. Flip her shit and patronize the crap out of her after you've got another job lined up. See, that's another great example of ways that you can subtly set your boundaries. You could say something like, "It's so adorable how you can't turn off your fitness instructor brain," or "Bless your heart that you think it's your job to get me exercise." I think ideally OP would say something to set some kind of boundary, but I also can empathize with how hard that must be in the moment. Like, somebody is making comments about your body and your exercise routine in a clearly disparaging way, and that can kind of make you freeze a little. But that's really not fair, and she shouldn't be getting away with that. An old divorced lady at work comments on my new marriage all the time. So I'm somewhat new to this company, and an older lady is generally negative, but it seems the only thing she knows about me, younger male by the way, is that I recently got married. For some reason, she always wants to make comments on it. I just walk by and she'll ask what I think about the old ball and chain, which is a normal enough thing, but that's the nicest thing she says. She has made comments like, I see married life is good to you because you are getting round. Again, it is not socially acceptable to comment on other people's bodies. And that's not even true because I just normally wear hoodies and I wore a normal shirt once. I can't even remember all the comments, but there's a lot, and she'll tell me that she's divorced for a reason, which I think is her trying to tell me that being married is bad? Not sure, and I don't care what she says as it seriously doesn't hurt me at all. I know she is a miserable old divorced lady. Maybe this doesn't belong in the work bullying subreddit because I don't really feel bullied, but my main question is, when does it become okay to just ask her how being old and alone treats her? I feel like any kind of comment back will just be taken horribly and probably get me into something with HR. I'm not interested in reporting her, it's just stupid, but she strikes me as someone who can dish the comments but not take them. I've been so tempted to just say something a little extra mean. Like when she commented on me getting round, I wanted to say, clearly your marriage was no good. She is very fragile and skinny. It's a dumb comment, but so is, you are getting round. I feel like one of the dynamics I see in this story is a lot of people are even less aware of how inappropriate it is to comment on the bodies of men. I have personally been guilty of this before when I was younger and dumber, and I see it repeated all the time. It's like there's this connection that because there's a bit less pressure on men about their appearance and about having idealized beauty standards, it's like a free pass to just spew all kinds of opinions about their bodies. And now after like growing and learning and also having several male clients who had different physical insecurities, I can see how ridiculous and untrue that is. We are all stuck living inside of our meat sacks, and you really just don't need to do anything that makes anybody more uncomfortable living inside their bodies. Whether you think it's a joke or you think you're poking fun, just be kind and keep your comments to yourself. Personally, I would make her uncomfortable by making objective comments about how what she's saying to you could get her in trouble with HR. For example, please do not comment on my body. She won't have a leg to stand on to complain about you if she wants to. You'll still be able to call her out and cause her discomfort. If you insult someone back, of course you're going to be seen as part of the problem. Yes, and please do not comment on my private life and marriage. It is inappropriate discussion in a workplace. This will shut it down nicely, but in the event that it doesn't, HR is just a few doors down. It is she who is committing the HR violation, not you. You nailed it. The only other thing is that OP should be documenting these incidents. Write down the date and time and what was said. After OP tells her nicely to stop the comments, then a few more of those coming from his divorced coworker should be grounds for informing HR. If nothing else, OP needs to engage in cover your ass behavior. Otherwise, it's just as likely that his coworker will make up stuff and go to HR complaining about him. OP, good luck and best wishes. In my experience, the best way to disarm coworkers who like to make snide little remarks in the form of jokes is to look them directly in the eye and ask them to explain the joke. Huh? I do love being married, but what do you mean? Round? When they have to explain the subtlety behind the comment, why it's funny to them, it stops being funny and calls the attention to their bad behavior. They're forced to confront how uncomfortable the situation they created is. Why is it uncomfortable? Because it's fucking rude and they know it. You sound like a wife guy, and good on you. You just started one of the best chapters of life, and good on you again for not letting this get to you. Bitter people suck. Yeah, I think that strategy of asking the person to explain the joke can be really helpful in a lot of situations. And like we discussed in the last story, if you're not going to explicitly like set boundaries and threaten to bring it to HR, you want to set those softer boundaries in a way that makes that person feel uncomfortable for the awkward situation they're creating. If it were me, I'd just stop and look at her with a concerned face and say, "You sound absolutely miserable. Are you okay?" Yeah, I was gonna say in that same vein of putting the awkwardness back on them, them, you can kind of bring like whatever level of faux genuine concern to the situation. And you can say something like that, or you sound really jealous of my relationship. What's going on with that? When I was pregnant with my first in 2004, I had a female coworker who was the worst. No matter what I said, she would turn it into a conversation about how much parenting sucks and how I had no clue what I was getting into. Oh, you're tired today? You just think you're tired. You don't even know what tired is. Plus, you're never going to have your bed to just yourself and your husband ever again, so you better try to enjoy sleeping while you can. It was so off-putting and inappropriate that I just did not know how to even respond. Today, I'd handle it differently based on 2 great pieces of advice. You don't have to attend every conversation/argument/event to which you are invited, and you are not bound by other people's expectations. Those are some great pieces of advice and good reminders to have your own internal boundaries. Like, boundaries don't always even have to be explicit. That's like what you might hear me call mental boundaries, where you just kind of have a wall up about something that you know is not really going to be helpful or healthy for you to engage in. She wants to talk about your marriage? Nope, you don't have to participate. She wants to cause drama and get you all riled up? Nope. Her expectations that you will hate marriage or that you will defend it so she can tell you how wrong you are also not your problem. So what does that look like in practice? Next time she comments on your marriage, you basically ignore the comment and say something about work. Her, old ball and chain let you have any fun this weekend? You, hey, did you get the invoice I left on your desk? What's the turnaround on that? She might reiterate her initial question, and you can just say something to the effect of, I like to keep my personal life out of the office/workplace. If you're feeling a little spicy, you might like one I've used to great effect with rude salespeople in my professional life. Wow, what an odd thing to ask me. Or, wow, I'm so surprised you feel comfortable saying that to me. Yes, those have come up in another video. I don't remember which one right now, but I love that strategy, especially when you're able to deliver them with like an air of detachment and amusement. You don't have to get emotionally involved, and you just put the awkwardness back on them because they're the ones who are doing something embarrassing. Or a new fave. I'm sure you don't mean to sound as rude/intrusive/offensive as you're sounding. Would you like to try that again? This one really only works for seriously obnoxious statements. Ultimately, you redirect the conversation a few times. If it keeps up, you just say, Karen, I appreciate how friendly you are and I enjoy working with you. I'd appreciate it if you stopped with the negative jokes about marriage. I know it doesn't go smoothly for everyone, but it's going great for me right now, and I'd like to enjoy this phase of my life without the constant and inappropriate comments each day. I think in that commenter's story, you also hear this theme that can be helpful to keep in mind, that people who are behaving this way often are a little bit bitter about how life has turned out for them. You know, the woman in OP's story is bitter because her marriage hurt her, and the woman in that commenter's story is bitter that parenting didn't turn out the way she expected. And that can help give you a little bit of empathy for those people, even when they are being obnoxious. Because ultimately it is kind of heartbreaking that they're using their energy and attention to try to tear other people down to make themselves feel better, rather than investing in the life that they actually want to live. I quit my job so I do not have to work the holidays. And now a new mom has to work in my place. I am an ICU nurse, and for the last 6 years, I have worked every Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Christmas, and New Year's. It was no big deal to work all these holidays because I do not have an immediate family, widowed 5 years ago and no children due to infertility issues. My parents and siblings have jobs in retail and public safety, which require them to work the holidays as well, so we traditionally celebrate the holidays several days after the actual day. This year, my parents retired and wanted to take a family trip to Europe because we have many relatives in Europe and they wanted to go to the European Christmas markets. In July of this year, I requested the week of Christmas off and it was approved. My brother and sister, as well as their spouses, also got the time off from their jobs since it was requested so early. We are heading to Europe for Christmas. Ooh, that sounds so fun. Fast forward to the last week of October. My boss calls me into the office to tell me that she has taken away my Christmas vacation because a coworker had a baby a few months ago, and she needs the time to celebrate the baby's first Christmas. This same coworker had a baby last year and had this baby 10 months from the other one. The coworker did not work any holidays last year and is not scheduled to work any this year. I made my boss aware of this point. I argued that my vacation request was approved back in July, and I made plans based on that request being approved. Also, that I had worked the last 6 Christmas holidays and would be working Thanksgiving and New Year. She stated that the priority for holiday vacations was given to those who had families. I informed her that just because I am widowed and did not have any children does not mean I do not have a family. She backpedaled and stated that people with children were given priority so they could spend Christmas with them. Again, I reminded her that my vacation was approved back in July and I would not cancel my trip, so someone who did not request vacation time in a timely manner could have the time off just because she had a baby. Needless to say, my boss did not change her mind. She put me on the schedule for Christmas and took my coworker off. This is absolutely shocking to me. I'm like at a loss for words. That is so unbelievably inappropriate. I say this as a mother, as somebody who absolutely loves my children. It is so unbelievably offensive and inappropriate to prioritize certain family relationships over others. What about this OP's relationship with their parents or their siblings? This is ridiculous. I'm like at a loss for words. It seems like this would have to be some kind of violation. I took the issue to HR and they simply said the manager is the one who determines the schedule and no work rules were broken. Well, her plan backfired as I turned in my notice and my last day will be the day before Thanksgiving. Yes, I am such a fan of that course of action. I know it's not always easy or accessible to everyone, like especially in this economy, in this job market. It's scary to give up a job, but if you're being disrespected to that degree and you have any choice, any wiggle room at all, I think it's worth it. I think employers should know that they can't treat their employees like that. Since I quit, my coworker now has to work Thanksgiving and Christmas. Why are those the only options? What about the supervisor working it? What about, I've worked in different inpatient mental health facilities where they have a relationship with contracted companies where you can get workers when you really need them. Why can't they find a solution like that? My other coworkers are saying I am a jerk for not just sucking it up and working Christmas and letting my other coworker have Christmas with her baby. Normally, I do work all the holidays so people can have time with their family. I have for the past 6 years. The one time I wanted to do something special with my family, I am the villain. I do not feel I am the a-hole since I requested the time off and made plans accordingly. I will greatly miss my job as I loved the hospital where I worked and the unit I was in. However, it is time for reflection and to put me first, something I have not done since my husband passed. Since nursing jobs are plentiful, I plan to take the entire month of December off and look for a new job in the new year. I love that plan. I love that OP is prioritizing themselves. I find it so wrong and manipulative when companies put emotional pressure on employees to solve issues and make decisions that really should be above their pay grade to figure out. You owe them nothing. You were proactive and you were given the time off. Other people's lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on your part. It sounds like you've given a great deal of yourself over the years to the point that you were taken for granted. The fact that your coworkers don't see any of your sacrifices is just another reason to run. It's time you enjoyed a holiday with your loved ones. People often view the unmarried as less than. I'm glad OP decided to push back on this. I'd never really thought about how being widowed could kick you back into that group in the eyes of others. It's to be treated like that in the first place, but to have it be the result of personal tragedy is just so extra awful. Even if she were still married, being a woman without children means it's your job to serve everyone else. It is so outrageous how prejudice like that comes up and really impacts people in a workplace. Everybody has intrinsic value, and for the most part, everybody has loved ones and people in their lives that are important. You know, chosen family and really close friends, or in this case, literally their parents and their siblings. And it's not anybody else's business to be making judgment calls and like determining the value of someone and how much they deserve time off based on those relationships. That's so bizarre. I'm glad OP quit. You're not the a-hole or villain your former coworkers are trying to make you out to be. Why aren't they offering to cover the new mother's shifts? People that consistently work the holidays, weekends, or less desired shifts always get screwed over, especially if they request time off. Heaven forbid they don't have a gaggle of children as an excuse to not work the less desirable shifts. Poor management and scheduling are not your responsibility. They showed how little they cared about you when they tried to rescind your time off. Enjoy your trip to the fullest and post the most social media worthy pics. My mom was a nurse for 40 years. When we were younger, the rule was you worked Thanksgiving or Christmas, and usually it went back and forth. So one year she worked Thanksgiving and was off for Christmas, then the next she worked Thanksgiving and had Christmas off. On the years she had to work Christmas, we got a letter in the mail from Santa saying, "Don't worry, he knew Mom had to work Christmas, so he would be down on Christmas Eve so we could still celebrate as a family." Oh my gosh, that is so cute. And look at how you can find solutions without acting entitled. Plenty of nurses in the world will be working on Christmas and find ways to still have special family time. It's just part of the career. No apples here. I was a nurse for 42 and a half years, 30 of which were in the ICU, from Italy, now retired. Like you, I have no children. I live with my husband and far from my family. For the last 10 years, the same thing has happened to me. The times I've had holidays for Christmas or New Year's in all 42 years can be counted on one hand. Because yes, it seems that those who have children or family nearby have more of a right to stay at home than those who don't. I always argued against this, but in the end, there was little I could do because we were always short of staff. So the manager decided to suspend vacations for the holidays. However, I always found myself working on those days, while those who had families, even if they weren't on holiday, perhaps finished a night shift so they had the rest of the day off. I must emphasize that in Italy, nurses work rotating shifts, so we are not hired just to work a specific shift. I completely understand your frustration. If I could, I would have quit too, especially since up until 5 years ago, managers, when I got angry because that was the third consecutive year I was working on New Year's Day, told me that I would be alone with my husband while there were people who were younger and staying out later than me. Then they came with the excuse that you'll be retired in a few years so you can make an effort. Our job is already hard, long shifts, little rest, and at least in Italy, poorly paid. But adding in managers who decide that your time and life are worth less than others makes you even more furious, not to mention the total lack of respect. I am amazed that in 2 continents, the situation of nurses is the same. OP, I apologize for the long reply, but I wanted to share the same frustration. Because even if we'd simply wanted to spend a Christmas day alone on the couch watching Netflix, after years and years of work, it should have been our right, not just the right of those who have procreated. I've often pointed out that my not having children wasn't a choice, but even if it had been, no one else has the right to decide I don't deserve a holiday break after having worked for them for decades. Just to conclude and share, I've been retired for a month, and last year and this year I worked all the holidays. All of them. On my last day of work, they gave me a gift and wrote me a letter they wanted me to read out loud, convinced that I would be moved. I didn't cry. I walked through the ICU door without looking back and have never felt so light, so free. I wish you the best, absolutely not the a-hole. Oh my gosh, the injustice is just so infuriating. There's this common symptom of childhood trauma that I carry that is like feeling very strongly about fairness and justice in the world. And so when I hear things like this, it just genuinely makes my blood boil. Not the a-hole. If you are in the United States, please consult with an employment lawyer. Your manager is not permitted to discriminate based on family choice. Get a strongly worded demand letter and get your money, honey. Exactly. I've heard of coworkers themselves pressuring child-free people to work on holidays, but not the company favoring employees with small children. The company I last worked for required 50% on any given holiday or vacation time. You had to work it out with the people in your lab. Luckily, the guy I was working with liked different holidays than me. I would take the entire Thanksgiving week and only burn 3 days of PTO, while he liked Christmas to New Year. Another thing that really gets under my skin that comment reminded me of is jobs making people fight over time off when it's really not necessary. Like a lot of the time when you're working in a lab, there aren't really emergencies that require someone there all the time. Maybe if you have certain experiments running that really need someone there to keep them going, that could be a different story. But I just also have seen and heard of of like employees getting pitted against each other when nothing would really happen if both employees just had the time off. So unless it's a job that actually needs 24/7 coverage, it just feels manipulative to me. I got my coworker fired and I don't feel bad one bit. I've been holding this in for months and I can't really tell anyone in my actual life because I know how it would sound. There was this person at my job, I'll call him Mark. Everyone loved him. He was funny, loud, always joking around, always volunteering to help. Managers thought he was amazing. Customers liked him. He was one of those people who walks into a room and somehow owns it. But he made my life miserable. It started small, so I convinced myself I was overreacting. Little comments about what I was wearing, like bold choice today, or he'd laugh if I messed up something minor and say, "It's okay, you're still learning," even though I'd been there longer than him. He would tell customers I was new. I wasn't. I trained him. In meetings, if I said something, he'd interrupt and basically repeat it louder like it was his idea, and then people would nod at him. I'd finish a project and somehow he'd end up presenting it. He was subtle about it, just enough that if I complained, I'd look insecure or dramatic. Some people are so good at like playing the politics of a certain field, getting on that promotion path by just schmoozing the right people and taking credit for other people's work. And that's how you end up with people in management who don't have any actual clue what they're doing. The thing that really got to me was overhearing him tell someone that I was emotionally unstable and probably not cut out for this field. I was literally in the hallway behind him. He didn't know I could hear. I went home that night and just sat there thinking about it over and over. After that, I started documenting everything. I felt crazy doing it. I had a running note in my phone with dates and times, screenshots of emails, examples of him taking credit for my work. One time, he accidentally CC'd me in an email where he was trashing me to someone else. He called me fragile and said I needed babysitting. I saved that too. I kept telling myself I'd never actually use it. I just wanted proof in case things got worse. Then HR sent out one of those anonymous workplace culture surveys, and instead of writing something vague like some team dynamics could improve, I attached receipts. I listed specific quotes. I attached screenshots. I named witnesses. I basically handed them a case file. A couple weeks later, HR called me in and I thought I was going to throw up. But apparently I wasn't the only one who had said something because they'd had similar concerns. About a month later, he was gone. Officially, it was conduct and performance issues. He didn't get some big send-off. He just stopped showing up and his desk was cleared out by the end of the week. When I saw his empty desk, I felt this big wave of relief. Not guilt, not sadness, relief. Like I could finally breathe at work without waiting for the next comment or joke at my expense. And that's the part that I can't really say out loud. I don't feel bad. Sometimes I think about the fact that he lost his job and that affects rent, bills, everything. And I wonder if I ruined someone's livelihood because I couldn't handle being teased. Maybe he was immature. Maybe things would have changed. But then I remember how small he made me feel every single day and how careful he was to do it in a way that made me look unreasonable if I spoke up. I didn't lie, I didn't exaggerate, I just stopped protecting him. And honestly, I'd probably do it again, lol. I feel like hearing that, it's a huge understatement to call that behavior teasing. This is like overt workplace bullying. And I wonder where OP actually got the idea that they would look unreasonable if they brought this behavior up. Is OP basing that on the coworkers' comments that they're fragile and emotionally unstable? Because I feel like that's a manipulation tactic that unfortunately has really worked for OP. And you can hear how they're still lacking a lot of self-confidence. Like, why on earth would you feel bad for just telling the truth about somebody who's bullying you? I feel like those thoughts are still part of this framework the coworker carefully built that everybody else loves him, and kind of shaking OP's confidence that they will be believed or respected. When there's a lot of evidence to the contrary, based on the fact that HR took this seriously and said that this wasn't the first concern they'd received about this employee. So that's just interesting to me, and I feel like it points to the levels of psychological damage a dynamic like this can have on someone, and maybe some of the work that would be helpful for OP to engage in to regain their confidence. He didn't lose his job because of you. He lost his job because of his behavior. Don't feel sad for him or his situation. Be happy for yourself that you don't need to think about him or his outrageous behavior. OP said, yeah, thank goodness. I hope to never have to deal with someone like that again. Don't feel bad at all. He clearly would have sacrificed you if he needed to or if it was beneficial to him. He already was ripping your reputation up and clearly was gunning to make himself sound like the best voice in any room. Hopefully the guy learns a lesson to do his own work and not be a douche. But let's be honest here, he's just gonna learn to do it again while being more careful. I did corporate for a few years before I decided to switch careers and go back to school. And I literally can't count how many of the worst people kept rising through the ranks because they were always the first to steal credit or throw others under the bus. People who you could observe doing next to nothing if you watched, besides sucking up to higher ups, and kept getting rewarded. Watching them move up and not even know what their job entails, and passing it off to others and again being rewarded because they delegated responsibilities. It's incredibly cliche, and yet it's very true. It's like it's a world made for liars and sociopaths. Yeah, I find so many things that are normalized in corporate business structures so infuriating and disgusting. I have a really hard time maintaining a charitable perspective of them at all because so many of these dynamics that just repeat and repeat and repeat are so bad for people's mental health. And how am I supposed to do my job and help people improve their mental health when they're spending 8 to 12 hours a day in an environment like that? My boss always found an error with my monthly reports and cover letters, so I used her old ones and watched her rip them apart. I was telling this story the other night and I was told to post it here. This takes place 19 years ago when I worked for State Street Bank for one of the worst human beings ever, Paula. Real places and names because I do not care. If you live in Boston and are looking to work at this place, skip it. It is a horrible place to work. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit nervous using the real name of the company, but this is not my story, I'm just repeating it, and let's disclaim that this is all alleged. Anyway, on to the story. I had just started working for Paula. The team was a mini project team tackling complex financial operation problems with high senior vice president visibility. At least that's how it was sold to me. In reality, it was a mushroom farm with Paula keeping you in the dark and feeding you shit. I've never heard that before. That's something. All I did was compile reports and gather data from people who were terrified of my team. Needless to say, I was bait and switched and I was looking to get out shortly after I got there. She had a habit of always criticizing your work to hell with the stupidest things. One of the reports I was responsible for was a weekly update on certain oil warrants out of Nigeria. To those that do not know, a warrant is an agreement to buy a commodity at a specific price regardless of what the current value is. So there was an option to buy at $30 per barrel when the prices peaked at $90 per barrel. We had no idea if the holder knew about this or not, but we had to monitor and report because the liability and loss would have been massive. Anywho, week after week after week after week, Paula would review and rip me a new a-hole over the format, verbiage, and every stupid thing not related to the actual numbers being right. Total ticky-tacky stuff. Yeah, I think I've said this before, but often managers and micromanagers take this strategy because they're actually very insecure about providing no value. If your supervisor or manager is constantly nitpicking you and providing like really trivial, ridiculous feedback, especially with no positive feedback, it is most often because they really do not know what value they provide, and so they feel like they have to carve this use for themselves in completely micromanaging you. One day, I was going through the network files and stumbled across an old folder for a similar project. It was Paula's handiwork before they gave her a team to manage. So I decided to use her format for everything, even changing the report structure to look just like hers and using her cover letter language. I brought it to her office to review and sign off, and she absolutely lost her shit. She asked what happened to the old format. I told her that since she didn't seem to like what I had been doing, I thought it best to change it around. She said that this was worse than before, probably the worst I had submitted to her. She went on and on for what seemed like forever. I just stared at her and didn't interrupt with a blank look. Her last question to me was, what was I thinking when I made these changes? And that's when I told her that I used the formatting and language she used when she was doing a similar report a few years back. That I found the folder online and used her past work verbatim, just with the numbers and relevant information changed. I gave her printouts of her reports and letters to compare. She just stared at me with this dumbstruck look on her face. I asked if it was this bad, should I just go back to my format then? She just signed off on the reports and said to send them as is. I said I just wanted to confirm that they were fine to send because less than a minute ago, she said it was basically unreadable. She said they were fine as is and we didn't have time to redo them. So I sent them out. I was smart enough to find and save all her old work to use as examples. I noticed that she went through and deleted/moved the older folders after this encounter because I was expecting her to. This cat and mouse game went on for the remainder of my time there. I would use her template/past work and wait for her to tear it apart. After a few more times, she eventually figured out that I had grabbed all of them. She asked me about this and I told her I created standard operation practices using all of her past work and had saved them locally. It seemed like a logical thing to do. I was able to quit a few months later. Thank you, Paula. That is amazing. That is so satisfying. And her response clearly shows that she's just finding problems and tearing OP down for some arbitrary reason. But it's so demoralizing to be in a position like that. These kind of supervisors and managers seriously need a new tactic. Quote, Paula would review and rip me a new a-hole over the format, verbiage, and every stupid thing not related to the actual numbers being right. In a past job, I was tasked with developing a very complex official corporate policy document that would become the official law of the land, so to speak. My boss would go through every draft with such a fine-toothed comb that she would send the draft back with complaints like, the period at the end of the sentence on page 57 looks like it might be in a different font than the rest of the document. Lady, I assure you, I did not change the font for one period. You are just insane. I feel you, OP. My father had a boss back when Photoshop work was physical paste-up work that would tell every person, this needs to be moved a 64th to the left, just so he sounded like he was involved in whatever project. Dad said after the first couple of times, he just took the back to his desk, waited a half an hour without changing anything, then brought it back, and Bossman said it was perfect. Edit, for the rest of the world, 1/64th of an inch is 0.4 millimeters. I had a boss who would make me write up reports about everything. She would criticize each and every one, acting as if she was doing me a favor by accepting them. Then I accidentally found out that she would use the base of my report and put her name on it every time. Corporate thought she was brilliant. I started to copy-paste gibberish or Shakespeare or anything into the middle of the narratives, as she didn't have the patience of a 5-year-old and certainly didn't read them. A few reports in, I got a call from one of the few decent upper management guys. He was laughing over the latest report and figured it had to be me. We agreed that I would forward him a copy of any real report I created and not go through her. I quit shortly afterward when she told some blatant lies to HR. After I left, she got them to list me as fired rather than voluntary. It bothered me for a while until I heard that the department was downsized due to her incompetence. I had a high school social studies teacher that didn't read papers. I was told this rumor, but I didn't believe it at first until I was shown proof from a trusted friend who had written junk in the middle of their homework. So I started doing the same thing. Yep, he never read it, just the beginning and the end. The middle could be totally made up. Or one time I wrote the synopsis of the episode of Little House on the Prairie that I was watching while doing my homework. Because who has time to be creative when you're trying to get through a pile of homework in 1982? That is so funny, and I love how bold it is to be taking advantage of that fact. Okay, OP commented, so one more thing with Paula. When I interviewed, I told her I was having a child soon. I told her that while I am not opposed to crashing work as needed, I was expecting/needed a position where there was a strong work-life balance. I was told that this was part of her management style and not to worry. Another lie. We were not allowed to leave until she did, and she didn't leave until her boss left. We are talking 7 to 8 p.m. every day. She got pissed when I took a week off when my child was born. She kept us there during a snowstorm. She got mad when I wanted to take a day off to do errands for my daughter's first birthday party. She made me burn vacation time to go to my brother-in-law's wake and funeral. She tried to stop me from using bereavement time for my sister-in-law's wake and funeral 7 months later. Then she tried to play it off like she was trying to get me the bereavement time. I found this out from an HR rep that I knew. She got mad at me because I didn't tell her sooner that Stugats was Italian slang for and ball. Her and another girl on the team used to call each other that because they watched The Sopranos and thought it meant dumb. She got mad at me when I would talk to Jim, the senior vice president, directly on work stuff or general real life stuff. She got annoyed when I talked about family stuff and having fun with my wife because she was divorced and unable to have a relationship, and her ex-husband had moved on and gotten remarried. She got mad when I didn't eat at my desk because I went to the cafeteria to get the F away from her. I gave my notice the following Monday after I came back from my sister-in-law's wake. I scheduled my exit interview with HR directly when I asked her about it, and she gave me a runaround answer. I booked the conference room in front of her office where she could see me, and I made sure she was there when I had it. She asked me how it went, and I told her that she will find out from HR. My last day, I was just going to leave and not say anything, but she told me to wait for her so she could say goodbye. She stayed on the phone for 45 minutes of spite just to keep me there. So when she finally came out, she went to shake my hand and I refused. In front of everybody, I told her to her face that she was probably the worst human being I've ever encountered and definitely the worst boss/leader. I then went on to say that I was glad she was divorced and she was going to die alone. Ooh. Her son will most likely marry a woman just like her, and she will steal him from her. I also told her that there was a reason why her husband was able to move on and she couldn't. I also all over her corporate record and said she was just a snitch for Jim and none of the senior vice presidents liked or respected her, and her whole career is based on effing people over. Then I left and I never spoke to her again. I did bump into her at industry events and she avoided me like the plague. I also badmouthed her in industry circles where I knew it would get back to her. Again, f*** you, Paula. That is really intense. I get that OP was super frustrated, but they're losing me a little bit. I don't think you have to get that personal with your insults. In general, as a rule of thumb, I think it is healthier and more mature to kind of stick to the subject at hand and not just hurl any random insult at someone. I personally think you just always want to be able to be proud of the way that you've talked to people and the way you've composed yourself. I get that OP was pushed to a point, but they would have come off looking a lot more mature and professional if they had stuck to their personal experience with Paula. Very early in my career, I had a boss who just loved to abuse people. I spent probably 6 months scared to death of her because I was terrified I'd lose my job. It went on until she tried it with a new guy who I remember being old as so he was probably 35, who came in and pushed back, just stared her down and asked, "Why would you think that I'd ever let you talk to me like that?" The dude didn't quit. She got all mad, but 100% couldn't fire him. And after that, it was like the spell was broken. HR had so many complaints that she ended up taking a leave of absence and never came back. Fantastic lesson about dealing with bullies at work. I love that. And a lot of time, the solution with workplace bullies is the same as any other schoolyard bully. They just need someone to stand up to them. It can be a lot harder because there's this perception that they have power over you or that nobody will believe you, but a lot of the time that's just an illusion. I applied for a dream job. 3 months later, they canceled it and told me to buy a candy bar. Here is my thank you note. Let me paint a picture for you. I am a redacted specialist. I have the certifications, I have the years of grit, the late nights, and the troubleshooting scars to prove it. I don't just do the job, I live for the optimization, the logic, the machinery of it. Like many of you, I am also a human being trying to survive in an economy that feels like it's actively trying to shake us off like fleas. That is so accurate, I could not relate more. And just knowing that this story is going to be related to the nightmare of job searching and recruitment, I feel like my blood pressure is already rising. I found the role at Global Conglomerate. It was perfect. The kind of job that actually pays the bills, puts food on the table, and stops the 3 a.m. panic attacks about the future. I spent hours tailoring my resume, writing a cover letter that wasn't generated by ChatGPT, and visualizing the commute. I hit submit. Then the great silence. 1 month passed, then 2. Then nearly 3. I assumed I was ghosted. Standard operating procedure, right? We're all just data points in an applicant tracking system purgatory. But then a notification, an email from a human, or so I thought. Did I get an interview? No. Did I get a standard rejection? No. I got an email informing me that after holding my hope hostage for a quarter of a year, they decided to cancel the position entirely. But they didn't stop there. In a stroke of tone-deaf genius that belongs in a museum of late-stage capitalism, they closed the email by suggesting that, since I won't be working there, I should go ahead and enjoy one of our many products. We can't give you a paycheck, but please give us yours. Something inside me snapped. Not in a violent way, but in a clarity of the absurd way. I realized that silence is complicity, so I drafted a response. I didn't send it yet, but I feel the need to share it here, because if we don't laugh at this, we'll scream. My sarcastic response. Subject: update regarding your strategic cancellation of redacted role. Dear Global Conglomerate Talent Acquisition Team, I am writing to express my overwhelming gratitude for your recent update. In a job market currently defined by uncertainty, ghosting, and the crushing weight of unanswered applications, your email was a breath of fresh air. To learn that after 3 months of deliberation, the position of redacted specialist has simply ceased to exist is a marvel of corporate efficiency. Most companies would have wasted time interviewing candidates or, heaven forbid, hiring someone to do the work. But you saw the inefficiency of employment and boldly chose non-existence. It is a strategic pivot that honestly takes my breath away. I was particularly moved by the suggestion that, in lieu of employment, I should enjoy one of your many products. You are absolutely right. Nothing soothes the existential dread of unemployment quite like the immediate transfer of my dwindling savings back into your revenue stream. It is a beautiful, closed-loop ecosystem. I apply for a job to earn money to buy your products, you cancel the job, and I buy the products anyway to mourn the job. That is the kind of synergy they don't teach in business school. Please consider this email my formal pledge of allegiance to your talent community. I will be waiting by my inbox, eager for the next opportunity to spend hours applying, only to be informed months later that the department has been dissolved. Thank you for setting the bar. I remain, as ever, a dedicated consumer and an aspiring asset. Best regards, my name. Candidate, customer, optimist. The takeaway, the real rant. This isn't just about Global Conglomerate. This is about the entire chain of command in modern hiring. To the HR software developers, you have gamified human desperation. To the hiring managers, if you don't have the budget, don't post the job. Stop talent hoarding for a rainy day that never comes. To the corporations, we are not just users or consumers. We are the people who build your products, fix your machines, and buy your services. When you treat candidates like annoyances rather than potential partners, you aren't just losing talent, you are showing us exactly who you are. We are willing to work. We are skilled. We are ready. But we are tired of dancing for an audience that walked out of the theater 3 months ago. Do better and stop complaining and whining that nobody wants to work anymore. The reality is people expect to be treated fairly, or at least like the adults we are, not like school children, and most certainly not manipulated into an underappreciated, overworked, and underpaid toxic work relationship. What do you think? My mind is just blown at the audacity of this company to suggest that maybe in lieu of a job offer, you could just purchase their products. It is so dismal out there, and no wonder people are just giving up hope. And honestly, I think OP should send the letter and also maybe share it openly on LinkedIn. I know some people might see that as unprofessional, but it just feels like we have to stand up and fight back against some of these absolutely absurd expectations. Things like that are just so not okay to do to people, and these companies aren't going to stop until there's enough public backlash. It is so disheartening, and honestly, I wish nothing but failure on these big corporations that mistreat employees and job prospects just to play games or boost their bottom line. Thank you so much for watching today. If you have anything you think I should react to, please send it to my email that's linked in the description below. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next one.